The morning light slid through the half-closed blinds of the small apartment in Brooklyn where Evelyn Hart had been sleeping for the past 3 weeks. It wasn't home. It was the kind of place you only end up in when life kicks you out of the one you built with your bare hands. Her sister's couch smelled faintly of old coffee and laundry detergent. She didn't complain. She didn't have the strength for that anymore. Today was the final divorce hearing. And Cole Harrington, her soon-to-be ex-husband, had already begun his show. Her phone lit up with a message from him just as she tied her hair back with shaky fingers. Remember to act sane today. Don't embarrass yourself again. The court already knows you're unstable. Unstable. He loved that word. He clung to it like a weapon he polished every morning. Evelyn stared at the message until the letters blurred. She wasn't unstable. She was exhausted. And exhaustion can make any woman look like she's unraveling, especially when the man she once trusted had spent years taking little pieces of her confidence and setting them on fire. She slipped her worn leather bag over her shoulder, the same one she used back when she worked at a Manhattan studio, designing office interiors for people who never learned her name. She remembered the days she was proud to walk into those buildings. Before Cole asked her to pause her ambitions so he could build something great for both of us. Both of us. She almost laughed at the memory. Outside, the November wind bit at her cheeks as she walked toward the subway. A soft gray haze hung over the Manhattan skyline, making the towers look distant and cold. She once dreamed of having an office up there, maybe near Fifth Avenue, somewhere with floor-to-ceiling windows. But those dreams now lived in boxes she left behind in the house she could no longer enter. When she reached the courthouse steps, reporters were already gathering. She heard her own name, her full name, floating in the air like an accusation. Is it true you're mentally unstable? Sources say you attacked your husband during an argument. Care to comment? Cole's PR team claims you need professional help. What do you say to that? PR team. Of course he had one. Cole arrived minutes later, stepping out of a sleek black sedan as if the pavement was rolled out just for him. He buttoned his coat with that practiced, arrogant calm she once mistook for confidence. His girlfriend, Mara, followed 2 steps behind, hiding her smirk. Cole leaned in close enough for only Evelyn to hear and whispered, "Try not to cry today. It makes you look weak." For a moment, Evelyn felt her knees soften. Then something shifted. A faint rumble echoed from the street below the courthouse, a sound she couldn't place yet, but it was approaching her. And it would change everything before Cole could speak another word. Long before reporters shouted her name on courthouse steps, before Cole Harrington twisted her life into a public spectacle, Evelyn Hart had been known for something simple but powerful: quiet brilliance, the kind that didn't need glitter to shine. The kind people only noticed when they stepped inside a room she designed and felt their breath change without knowing why. At 27, she was one of the most promising young interior architects at a boutique Manhattan studio on Fifth Avenue. Her sketches flowed like water. Her concepts blended warmth and precision in a way clients kept calling unexpectedly human. She didn't brag. She didn't hustle for attention. She just worked. Long nights, early mornings, endless cups of coffee gone cold on her drafting table. She wasn't rich. She didn't come from connections. She grew up in a modest home in Ohio, raised by a single mother who worked 2 jobs and still found time to teach Evelyn that character mattered more than noise. Evelyn carried that belief with her when she moved to New York. She never chased luxury, she chased purpose. Then she met Cole. Back then, Cole wasn't the polished CEO who now strutted out of a sedan with a publicist trailing behind. He was a hungry dreamer, trying to launch a home tech startup from a cramped apartment in the East Village. He wore secondhand jackets and lived on energy drinks. He spoke fast, dreamed bigger, and told Evelyn she was the only person who ever made him feel understood. "You see the world differently," he told her once, while she sketched a layout on a napkin during one of their late-night talks. "When we make it big, it will be because of people like you. Steady, brilliant, real." She believed him, believed in him. When he asked her to help redesign his first office, she worked without pay, staying up until 3 a.m., aligning color palettes, drafting lighting plans, and building 3D models on her aging laptop. Cole bragged about the results at every meeting. "My designer did this," he said proudly. "She's the best in Manhattan." He didn't mention she was also his girlfriend. He didn't mention she was doing it for free. When he finally secured investors, he looked at her with the excitement of a man who thought love and victory were the same thing. "Evie, I need you full-time. Help me build this from the inside. We're in this together." Together. The word that ruins so many women. Evelyn quit her Fifth Avenue studio. She walked away from a near promotion, from a portfolio that was just beginning to sparkle, from colleagues who warned her not to mix love with ambition. She trusted Cole more than she trusted her own instincts. She believed loyalty would be rewarded. But success changes people differently. For Evelyn, success meant stability. For Cole, it meant power. By the time they got married, his startup had taken off. Investors adored him. Reporters called him a visionary. He moved them into a condo overlooking Central Park and bought suits tailored on Madison Avenue. The charming dreamer she once loved began speaking in calculated tones, like every word was a performance. He started introducing Evelyn not as the woman who built his first office, but as my wife. "She stays home, keeps things calm for me." He erased her work from the company website. He stopped asking for her input. He stopped saying thank you. But the worst part wasn't how he diminished her. It was how easily she believed she deserved it. Years of subtle disapproval can rot any woman's confidence from the inside out. Evelyn went from designing offices for Fortune 500 companies to being told she couldn't even manage her own emotions. Cole called her too sensitive, too dramatic, too insecure. And he said it with such calm authority she sometimes wondered if he was right. Yet beneath the self-doubt, something inside her refused to die. A thin, stubborn thread of strength. A memory of the woman she once was. A spark. And that spark would soon be fanned by a force Cole never saw coming. Because someone else had been watching Evelyn's talent long before Cole tried to bury it. Manhattan had a way of swallowing people whole, especially those who once believed the city was theirs. Evelyn Hart used to walk its streets with a sense of purpose, tracing building facades with her eyes, studying the play of light across glass towers like she was reading a language only she understood. But now, as the divorce pushed her to the edges of the life she once helped build, the city felt bigger, harsher, colder. The heart of the storm was always the same place, the Harrington and Hale building on Park Avenue, the headquarters of Cole's home tech empire. A gleaming tower of steel and tinted windows, it rose above the street with an arrogance that mirrored the man who owned half of it. Evelyn had designed the original interior concept when Cole's company was still working out of a renovated loft. She remembered choosing soft lighting, warm wood textures, and curved lines meant to calm employees in the high-pressure world of tech. Now the lobby looked nothing like her sketches. Cole had replaced everything with harsh geometric lighting and chrome finishes, chasing the kind of sterile luxury meant to impress investors. To Evelyn, it felt like stepping into a place that had stolen her own fingerprints. The second setting, one far more intimate, was the Plaza Hotel, where Cole now hosted industry dinners and pretended Evelyn had never contributed to his rise. The grand chandeliers, the gold-trimmed walls, the white marble floors. Evelyn had once attended these events on his arm. Now she passed the hotel only when she had to catch the subway from Fifth Avenue, avoiding the doormen's eyes in case they recognized her. But nothing compared to the place that carried the deepest cut. The Hamptons house. A modern beachside villa with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the Atlantic. Cole bought it right after his company reached its first $100 million valuation. He told Evelyn he wanted her to decorate it however she dreamed. "Let this be your canvas," he had said. She spent 8 months crafting every inch, soft neutral palettes, natural stone accents, and hand-picked furnishings from small artisans across the East Coast. She found out later that Cole and his mistress Mara had spent entire weekends there pretending the house was theirs alone. The betrayal lit a quiet fire inside her, a fire that burned without smoke, without sound, but never went out. In contrast to the luxury Cole flaunted, Evelyn's current world was almost painfully simple. Her sister's 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn. A tiny balcony with chipped paint. A wobbly kitchen table where she stared at job listings each night. The apartment building sat above a noisy corner store, and her room overlooked an alley where delivery trucks rumbled at dawn. But there was safety in the noise, comfort in the ordinariness. It reminded her she wasn't trapped anymore, even if she felt lost. And then there was Mason Grant's territory, the third major setting, the one that would soon collide with Evelyn's story. Grant Industries occupied a penthouse office on 53rd Street, with panoramic windows revealing Manhattan's skyline like a living painting. The space was quiet, understated, elegant, exactly the opposite of Cole's flashy headquarters. Evelyn didn't know it yet, but someone inside those walls had been reviewing her old portfolio files, rediscovering the talent Cole had buried. 3 worlds: the empire she built but was erased from, the luxury she once lived but was pushed out of, and the empire of the man who would soon rewrite her fate. All 3 were about to intersect. All 3 were about to collide. And Evelyn was standing at the fault line where everything would break open. Cole Harrington hadn't always been the man the world feared or admired. Evelyn once knew a version of him who was humble, hungry, almost gentle. But power didn't just change Cole, it inflated every flaw he'd ever hidden. The more successful he became, the more dangerous his charm turned. And by the time Evelyn realized it, she was already living under a roof built from his ambition and her silence. To the outside world, Cole was the perfect American success story. A self-made tech CEO, featured on magazine covers, photographed in tailored suits, quoted in business journals alongside Wall Street titans. Reporters called him the new face of innovation. Venture capitalists lined up to shake his hand. He managed to project humility, intelligence, and vision, all while carefully masking the rot growing underneath. Inside the marriage, it was a different man entirely. At home, he wielded words like scalpels. He didn't need to shout. He had mastered a quieter cruelty, the kind that settled in the bones. "Evie, you're overreacting again. Maybe you should take a break from work. You're not thinking clearly. No wonder investors only want to talk to me." Every sentence was delivered with that calm, patronizing tone that made Evelyn question her own instincts. He was a master of making her feel small, irrational, undeserving. And he did it with the precision of someone who practiced. But nothing compared to the moment she learned the full truth about his affair with Mara Klein. It wasn't the affair itself that gutted her. She had suspected for months, late nights at the office, perfume on his jacket, the sudden importance of image consultants and PR training. What crushed her was where the affair took place. The Hamptons house Evelyn had spent months designing with her heart, her talent, her bare hands. She discovered it accidentally. A friend texted her a photo. Cole and Mara stepping out of the beach house together, laughing, his hand on her waist. The caption, "Thought this was you for a second. Sorry." Evelyn stared at the photo for minutes, unable to breathe. Mara was wearing one of Evelyn's old scarves. The same scarf Evelyn had left draped on a chair in the living room of the Hamptons house during her last visit. A piece of her still hanging in a place she no longer belonged. When she confronted Cole, he didn't deny it. He didn't even look ashamed. He simply shrugged and said, "You weren't there." Mara was. That was when Evelyn understood something essential about Cole. He didn't feel guilt. He felt entitlement. He believed success granted him immunity from consequences, that everyone around him existed to serve his needs. Employees, investors, his wife. And the divorce, to him, it wasn't a parting of lives. It was a performance, another stage on which to dominate. In the days leading up to the hearing, Cole crafted a narrative with surgical precision. He hired a PR team to manage his image. He leaked stories framing himself as the caring husband dealing with a wife who was emotionally unstable. He sent private messages to mutual friends implying Evelyn was difficult and clinging to money she didn't earn. He even convinced a doctor, one on his board of advisors, to file a fabricated report questioning Evelyn's mental stability. It was subtle, just enough to plant doubt, but not enough to expose the lie. Every move was calculated, every attack delivered with a smile. Cole Harrington wasn't just a man who betrayed his wife. He was a man who believed he could rewrite the truth itself, and he almost succeeded. Until the day someone far more powerful stepped into the story, and Cole's perfect illusion began to crack. If there was one thing Evelyn Hart had always feared, it was humiliation. Quiet disappointment she could survive. Private heartbreak she could endure. But public humiliation, that kind Cole specialized in, had a different kind of sting. It left bruises on the soul that no one else could see. The worst of it happened at the Plaza Hotel, a place she used to associate with elegance, celebration, and possibility. Cole had once brought her there on their anniversary, promising her a future filled with success and stability. Now the same lobby, with its marble floors and warm chandeliers, would become the stage for her deepest wound. The betrayal didn't begin abruptly. It unfolded slowly, like a cruel melody, crescendoing toward a violent end. It started with a whispered message from one of her old colleagues. "Evie, Cole's hosting a networking dinner at the Plaza tonight. You should see this." She hadn't planned on going. She wasn't invited, obviously, but something inside her, something fragile and angry, needed to know what he was saying behind her back. Needed to hear it with her own ears, to confirm she wasn't losing her mind. She walked into the hotel wearing a simple dress, nothing glamorous. She stayed near the entrance of the ballroom, out of sight but close enough to overhear. Cole was already surrounded by investors, laughing loudly like he owned the air. Mara stood beside him in a shimmering silver dress that caught the chandelier light like broken glass. Her hand rested casually on Cole's arm, too familiar, too confident, too practiced. Evelyn wasn't prepared for what she heard next. One investor clinked a glass and joked, "Cole, how's the divorce going?" "Heard it's a messy one." Cole smirked, enjoying the attention. Messy? Not really. Evelyn was always fragile, emotional. "You know how artistic types can get." The men chuckled. He continued, "Honestly, I'm doing her a favor. She wasn't built for the pressure of a real partnership. She's better off living a quiet life somewhere simpler. Maybe with family." "Ohio, right?" someone asked. Cole grinned. "Exactly. She'll be fine. I'm sure her sister has a couch." Evelyn's breath caught. The words were casual, off-handed, delivered like a joke, but they hit her chest with the force of a truck. Mara chimed in, pretending to sound sympathetic. "She's not stable, Cole. You did everything you could. Sometimes people just break." "Break?" Evelyn's hands trembled at her sides. Then came the moment, the one that crushed the last remaining piece of her trust. One of the investors nodded toward a large framed photo displayed near the bar. It was a photo from the Hamptons' house. Evelyn recognized it instantly. She had chosen the frame herself, chosen the lighting, chosen the art on the wall behind Cole. But the image had been altered. Her side of the photo, her presence, was gone. Deleted. Cropped out. Mara stood beside Cole in the edited version, as if she had been the woman who helped him build everything. Cole laughed, lifted his glass, and spoke loudly enough for half the room to hear. "Out with the old, in with the upgraded." A punchline, a humiliation, a message to everyone and to Evelyn about her worth. She turned away before anyone could see her tears. She made it as far as the hallway before her legs gave out. She pressed her back against the cold marble wall, trying to slow her breathing. This wasn't heartbreak. This was erasure. He was rewriting reality, replacing her with a newer version, discarding years of her devotion like expired leftovers. But what Cole didn't know, what no one in that glittering ballroom knew, was that humiliation has a strange power. Sometimes when a person is pushed low enough, the ground becomes the perfect place to rise from. And the next time Evelyn Hart walked into the Plaza, she wouldn't be hiding in the shadows. The night after the Plaza humiliation, Evelyn Hart didn't sleep. She lay curled on the edge of her sister's couch, staring at the faint glow of city lights reflected on the ceiling. The sounds of Brooklyn, sirens, buses, chattering neighbors, blended together like a tide that refused to let her rest. Her mind replayed every word Cole said at the gala, each one sharper than the last. Fragile, unstable, a favor. She pressed the heel of her hand against her chest, trying to quiet the ache. But humiliation has a way of echoing long after the moment ends. By dawn, she felt hollow. Chloe left early for work, leaving a note taped to the fridge. "I love you. Please eat something. Text me if you need me." Evelyn stared at it for a long time, unable to decide whether to smile or cry. She settled for nothing at all. She wandered into the tiny bathroom, turned on the sink, and splashed cold water on her face. The mirror didn't show the Evelyn she once knew. The confident designer, the woman who dreamed of opening her own studio, the woman who believed she was worth loving. The reflection was pale, Eyes swollen, shoulders slumped, a woman convinced she had failed at life. The thought hit her harder than she expected. She gripped the side of the sink as her breath shook. What if Cole was right? What if she really was fragile? What if she had wasted the best years of her life on a man who never saw her? Her phone buzzed. A message from the court. Reminder of final hearing date. Bring required documentation. She dropped the phone onto the counter as if it had burned her. Then came another message, this time from an unknown number. Miss Hart, I hope you are well. Mr. Grant asked that I forward your design packet for review. He said he was impressed with the lighting concept you submitted last year. If you're available, he'd like to see updated sketches. Mason Grant, the billionaire rival. Her hands trembled, not from excitement but disbelief. She hadn't submitted anything last year. She remembered sending a handful of anonymous design proposals to various development firms 2 years earlier when she was desperate to keep her skills alive. She had assumed nothing came of it. Why now? Why him? She couldn't think about that. Not today. She shoved her phone into her bag, grabbed her coat, and left the apartment. She didn't have a destination, just the need to move, to breathe air not poisoned by the weight of old memories. She ended up near the East River, standing alone by the railing as cold wind whipped at her hair. The Manhattan skyline glimmered across the water, indifferent, magnificent. She hugged herself, trying to find warmth in her own arms. This was the lowest she had felt in years. And the shame wasn't about losing Cole. It was about losing herself. She remembered the young woman who had arrived in New York with a suitcase, a portfolio, and a dream big enough to light a city. Where had she gone? When had she disappeared beneath someone else's shadow? Tears finally slipped down her cheeks, slow, silent, cleansing. She didn't sob. She didn't scream. She simply let the grief wash over her, too tired to fight it anymore. Hours must have passed before she realized she was freezing. She pulled out her phone to call an Uber, but it slipped from her hands and hit the pavement, screen cracking. That's when she whispered to herself, voice trembling, I can't do this anymore. But the world doesn't pause just because a heart breaks. A low hum approached from behind, a familiar sound she couldn't place yet. And that sound would soon pull Evelyn into a future she could never have predicted. The low hum behind Evelyn grew louder, steady, almost mechanical, like the purr of a luxury engine. She didn't turn around right away. She was too tired, too drained, too consumed by the ache in her chest. But when the sound stopped directly beside her, she finally looked over her shoulder. A sleek black SUV, no, not an SUV exactly. A custom-built Range Rover with tinted windows and a shine so clean it mirrored the river's surface, had pulled up next to the walkway. The passenger door opened slowly. A man stepped out, tall, dark coat, confident posture, not arrogant but deliberate. She didn't recognize him at first. She wasn't thinking clearly enough to place faces. But when he spoke, his voice carried a warmth she hadn't felt in years. Miss Hart? Evelyn blinked at him, confused. Do I know you? He offered a gentle smile. We met briefly at the Redwood Foundation Gala 5 years ago. You probably don't remember. I doubt I made much of an impression. The Redwood Gala. She hadn't thought of that night in ages. It was before the marriage, before the sacrifice, before she shrank herself to fit into Cole's world. She remembered wearing a navy dress she bought on sale, standing awkwardly beside designers who had already made it. She also remembered a man complimenting her work with a sincerity that surprised her. Slowly, the memory surfaced. Mason Grant, she whispered. He nodded. It's good to see you again. Evelyn's mouth went dry. Mason Grant, the billionaire developer Cole loathed, the man with a reputation for changing entire city blocks with a single signature, was standing 3 feet away from her, while she looked like a soaked, exhausted version of the woman she once was. She folded her arms, suddenly self-conscious. What are you doing here? He took a moment before answering, as if choosing his words carefully. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. My team sent emails, but I never heard back. He paused, studying her cracked phone on the ground. Now I see why. She felt heat rush to her face. I've been dealing with personal things. I know, he said quietly. Her chest tightened. You know? He exhaled lightly, breath fogging in the cold air. I'm not in the habit of following people's private matters, but Cole has been loud, too loud. Interviews, leaks, one-sided narratives. Mason looked at her with calm sympathy that didn't pity her. It didn't add up. She swallowed hard. So you just came to find me? No, he corrected gently. I came because I realized something important. You didn't submit a proposal to my firm last year. You submitted one 2 years ago. And someone at my company flagged it recently, not because it was new, but because your design style matched a concept we've been struggling with for months. She stared at him, confused. I don't understand. You solved a problem we haven't been able to solve, he explained. Your lighting work, your layout flow, the way you handle transitional spaces. Evelyn, no one designs like you. Her throat tightened. She had forgotten what it felt like for someone to speak to her as if she were talented, valuable, relevant. He continued, voice steady. We want to offer you a contract. But more importantly, I wanted to look you in the eye and tell you, you're not who Cole says you are. You're not fragile. You're not unstable. You're extraordinary. The words hit her harder than Cole's insults ever had. Evelyn felt something inside her shift, a tiny click like a lock turning after years of being stuck. She didn't fully believe Mason yet, but she wanted to. She wanted to believe in herself again. Mason glanced toward the river. Let me take you home. You shouldn't be out here alone. Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. She followed him to the car, but as the door closed behind her, she felt a tremor run through her heart. Because Mason Grant wasn't the only person who had been watching her life unravel, and someone else had plans of their own. The drive back to Brooklyn was quiet, but not uncomfortable. Evelyn sat in the back seat of Mason's Range Rover, fingers laced tightly on her lap, trying to understand how her life had shifted so dramatically in a matter of minutes. The leather interior smelled faintly of cedar and clean air, a sharp contrast to the chaos inside her chest. Mason didn't push her to talk. He simply let the silence settle the way a steady hand calms a trembling shoulder. When the car stopped in front of her sister's apartment building, Evelyn expected him to wish her luck and drive away. Instead, he stepped out first and opened her door, an old-fashioned gesture that startled her. You don't have to walk me in, she said quietly. I know, he replied, but I want to. They climbed the narrow stairwell together. When Evelyn unlocked the door, the warmth of Chloe's small apartment washed over her. Mason looked around briefly, not judging, just observing, as if trying to understand the world she'd been surviving in. Would you like something to drink? Evelyn asked out of habit, then mentally kicked herself, as if she had anything decent to offer a billionaire. But Mason just smiled. Water is fine. She poured 2 glasses from the tap, suddenly aware of how chipped the cups were. When she handed him one, his fingers brushed hers, warm, steady. Evelyn, he began, choosing his words with care, I'm not here to complicate your life. You're going through something brutal. But I want you to know that my offer, the contract, the opportunity, it's real. And it's yours if you want it. Her voice felt trapped somewhere below her ribs. I don't know if I'm ready. That's fair, he nodded. But I've reviewed more design portfolios than I can count. Only a handful have ever made me pause. Yours did. He took a sip of water, then set the cup down. Don't let Cole bury what you've built. He doesn't get to define you. His confidence in her felt unreal, like a light shining into a room she'd kept locked for years. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed on the counter. A message from Cole. Enjoying your farewell tour? Don't forget tomorrow's hearing, and try not to embarrass yourself again. Her stomach twisted, the earlier warmth draining from her limbs. Mason saw her expression shift and frowned. He's still contacting you like this? He asked. She nodded, ashamed of how much power Cole still had over her nerves. Evelyn, Mason said gently but firmly, you need to stop letting him script your reactions. He paused. May I make a suggestion? She lifted her gaze. What kind? Prepare yourself, he said. Not for him, for you. You've been shrinking for so long you forgot how much space you're allowed to take up. His eyes softened. Let me help. She shook her head. I don't want charity. Good, he said. Because I don't give it, I invest, and you're worth investing in. The words hit her harder than she expected. Not romantic, respectful, empowering. He stood. Tomorrow is important, and whether you realize it yet or not, you're walking into that courtroom with far more leverage than Cole thinks. I don't feel strong, she confessed. That's because strength isn't a feeling, Mason replied. It's a decision you make before you need it. Her breath caught. He walked toward the door, then turned back. Wear something that makes you feel like yourself tomorrow. Not the version Cole tried to create. The real Evelyn. She swallowed. What if I don't remember who she is anymore? He held her eyes for a long moment. Then tomorrow, he said softly, we start finding her. He left her with those words echoing like a promise. And when the door clicked shut, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in years, the first flicker of wanting to fight back. Evelyn woke before sunrise, long before Brooklyn stirred awake. Her mind buzzed with a strange combination of fear and determination. The hearing was only hours away. Cole would be there with his lawyers, his PR team, his perfect smile. She could almost hear his voice already, dripping with condescension, ready to twist the narrative in his favor. But today felt different. She sat up slowly, running her fingers through her tangled hair, remembering Mason's words from the night before. Wear something that makes you feel like yourself. The real Evelyn. The real Evelyn. She wasn't sure she remembered who that woman was, but she intended to try. Chloe emerged from her bedroom, hair in a messy bun, still half asleep. When she saw Evelyn sitting upright on the sofa, clearly preparing for something big, she instantly snapped into sister mode. Okay, Chloe said, hands on her hips. We're not going to that courthouse looking like we've been dragged through 3 emotional hurricanes. Sit, I'm calling in reinforcements. Evelyn blinked. Reinforcements? But Chloe was already dialing. Within an hour, 2 of her friends, stylists from a boutique salon in Williamsburg, arrived carrying makeup kits, curling irons, and garment bags like soldiers entering battle. Is this the infamous Cole Harrington divorce case? One of them whispered, eyes widening. Girl, we've been following it on social media. Sit down. Let us fix the universe. Evelyn tried to protest, but Chloe cut her off. No arguing. Today is not about him. Today is about you, walking in there like the woman he never deserved. They washed and styled Evelyn's hair, giving it soft waves that framed her face. They brightened her complexion, concealed the exhaustion under her eyes, and chose makeup that enhanced her natural features rather than masking them. But the transformation wasn't just physical. As she watched herself in the mirror, Evelyn saw glimpses of the woman she used to be. The one who moved through Manhattan studios with confidence, who approached design challenges with clarity, who believed her voice mattered. This dress is yours, Chloe said, dangling a charcoal gray wrap dress from a hanger. Found it at a consignment shop. It screamed Evelyn to me. Evelyn slipped it on. It hugged her waist in a way that felt strong, not showy. It moved when she breathed. It felt intentional. She paired it with simple black heels she had nearly thrown away during one of her darker moments. When she stepped in front of the mirror again, the room fell quiet. Her stylists exchanged a look. Chloe's eyes softened. Evelyn barely recognized herself, not because she looked unlike the woman she'd been, but because she looked like the woman she'd forgotten. You're glowing, Chloe whispered. Evelyn's breath caught. I look confident. You are, Chloe said. You just needed reminding. Evelyn's phone buzzed, a message from a number saved under a simple initial, M. If you need a ride, I'm 5 minutes away. Her pulse skipped. Mason. He remembered. He hadn't just said nice things last night, he meant them. She typed back, thank you, I'll meet you outside. But before she stepped out the door, Chloe grabbed her hand. Evie, listen to me, she said firmly. Cole will try to rattle you. He will lie, manipulate, charm the room, but you are walking in there with something he can't fake. Evelyn looked at her sister. What's that? Truth, Chloe said simply. And the truth always wins, eventually. Evelyn hugged her, grabbing onto that sentence like a lifeline. She stepped outside into the crisp morning air. Right on cue, a black Mercedes sedan eased up to the curb. The back door opened. Mason was inside. His expression calm, almost protective. As she approached, he stood up slightly, eyes sweeping over her with quiet respect. Evelyn, he said, voice low. You're ready. She didn't know if she believed that completely yet, but she felt different, stronger. And when she slid into the car beside him, one undeniable thought surfaced. Today, for the first time, Cole wouldn't be facing the broken version of her he created. The courthouse on Center Street looked colder than usual, its gray stone exterior towering over the morning crowd like a judgment waiting to fall. Evelyn stepped out of the Mercedes with careful breaths, her charcoal-wrapped dress fluttering slightly in the wind. Mason walked beside her, but kept a respectful distance, letting her lead. He didn't claim her space, he supported it. Inside, the marble floors echoed with footsteps, whispered conversations, and the rustling of legal papers. Evelyn felt her pulse racing, but Mason leaned in just enough for her to hear him. "Remember," he murmured, "you're walking in here as the woman Cole underestimated, not the one he broke." She nodded gently. The double doors to the courtroom opened, and every head turned. Cole Harrington was already inside. Flanked by his sleek legal team, hair perfectly styled, suit crisp, expression smug, he looked like a man who believed the world revolved around his version of the story. His girlfriend Mara sat behind him, legs crossed, wearing a cream blazer and a gleaming smile that didn't reach her eyes. The moment Cole saw Evelyn, his eyebrows lifted, surprise flashing just long enough to break his facade. Evelyn looked nothing like the fragile woman he expected to dominate today. That crack in his expression gave her power. He stood up, approached her as if greeting an old friend, and said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, Well, look who finally decided to pull herself together. I almost didn't recognize you." A few people glanced over. Evelyn held her head high. "Hello, Cole," he smirked. "I'm glad you made an effort today. It'll help the court believe you're functioning." His tone carried casual cruelty. Mason took one step forward, not aggressive, not confrontational, simply present. Cole's eyes flicked to him, irritation sparking. Cole forced a laugh. "And who might you be? Her emotional support driver?" The people nearby chuckled awkwardly. Mason didn't react. "I'm here as a colleague." Something tightened in Cole's jaw. Before he could respond, the bailiff called for everyone to take their seats. Evelyn walked to her table with Dr. Serena Wolfe, her attorney, a calm, controlled woman who carried a leather portfolio and an aura of quiet authority. Cole made sure Mara sat in the front row, close enough to be seen, close enough to taunt. Evelyn refused to acknowledge her. The proceeding began. Cole's attorney opened aggressively. They painted Evelyn as unstable, unpredictable, financially dependent, incapable of functioning without Cole's support. They referenced the false mental health report, cleverly worded but deeply damaging. Cole leaned back in his chair, legs crossed, looking pleased with every lie spoken on his behalf. Then came the worst moment, an intentional public blow. Cole's attorney displayed a series of private photos. Evelyn crying during an argument, Evelyn exhausted, Evelyn looking disheveled after a sleepless night, all taken without her consent. Mara smiled proudly. Cole casually sipped water. Whispers filled the courtroom. Heat rose in Evelyn's face. Shame, anger, betrayal swirling into something unbearable. Her throat tightened, vision blurring. Serena whispered, "Stay steady. Your truth is coming." But Cole wasn't done. He stood, unprompted, and addressed the court directly. "I tried to help my wife," he said, voice dripping with false compassion. "But she isn't capable of managing pressure. Her breakdowns were constant. I had to protect our reputation. Honestly, I'm worried she's a danger to herself." His words settled into the courtroom like poison. Evelyn's breath caught, but she didn't break. Because across the aisle, Mason sat perfectly still, watching Cole with narrowed eyes. He knew something that would turn this entire case upside down. And when Serena opened her folder, revealing documents Evelyn had never seen, Evelyn felt a shift in the air. The truth was about to strike harder than any lie Cole had ever crafted. The courtroom had fallen into a heavy silence after Cole's performance, a silence thick enough to choke on. Evelyn felt every eye on her, waiting to see if she would crumble. Cole leaned back in his chair like a man who believed he had just secured his victory. Mara crossed her legs and gave Evelyn a pitying look, the kind that stung more than hatred. But Dr. Serena Wolfe didn't flinch. She rose slowly, smoothing her charcoal suit jacket, and stepped toward the bench with the calm confidence of someone holding a loaded weapon the other side didn't know existed. "Your Honor," Serena began, "I would like to submit several exhibits into evidence, documents recently obtained through independent investigation." Cole's attorney shot up. "Objection. We were not informed of any new materials." "Because," Serena replied coolly, "your client attempted to prevent their discovery." A ripple went through the room. The judge nodded. "Proceed." Serena opened her leather portfolio, and Evelyn felt her breath catch. She had never seen those documents before. What had Serena uncovered? The first image appeared on the screen, a digital timestamp from 2 years earlier, long before Cole claimed Evelyn had emotional instability. It showed Cole forwarding Evelyn's design concepts to employees, labeling them as company assets. Exhibit A, Serena said clearly, demonstrates that Mrs. Hart provided substantial, unpaid labor to Harrington and Hale during key developmental phases. Her work was integral to the company's brand identity. Cole stiffened. Serena flipped to the next exhibit, employee testimonies. Exhibit B includes statements from former staff who confirm that Mrs. Hart was the primary designer for the company's first 3 office builds. She worked without contract, salary, or credit, all at Mr. Harrington's instruction. Whispers filled the courtroom again. Evelyn's throat tightened. She had known he stole her work, but seeing it documented felt like a knife being pulled out of a wound she thought would never close. Cole's attorney objected again. These statements are fabricated. Serena cut him off. We also have confirming emails, sent from Mr. Harrington's own company account. The screen lit up with screenshots. Emails from Cole praising Evie's designs, asking employees to implement her layout changes, calling her the backbone of this place. Cole's face drained of color, but Serena wasn't done. Now, she said, her voice steady as steel, let's address the claim regarding Mrs. Spulla Hart's mental health. Cole straightened, preparing to strike back, but Serena clicked to the next slide. A letter. A confidential letter. Exhibit C, she said, is a statement from Dr. Aria Benson, the psychiatrist Mr. Harrington claims diagnosed Mrs. Hart as unstable. Dr. Benson has confirmed under oath that she never met Mrs. Hart. She was pressured by Mr. Harrington, through business incentives, to draft a vague wellness recommendation he later misrepresented as a psychiatric evaluation. A collective gasp filled the room. Mara wilted in her seat. Cole shot to his feet. That's a lie. Sit down, Mr. Harrington, the judge ordered firmly. But Serena wasn't finished. She produced a final folder, thinner than the others, but somehow heavier. And lastly, she said, we have Exhibit D, a digital security report from the Hamptons property, showing that Mr. Harrington installed surveillance cameras inside shared areas without Mrs. Hart's knowledge. Evelyn froze. What? She whispered. Serena's jaw tightened. Yes, and several of the photos presented today were pulled directly from those hidden cameras. The courtroom erupted in outrage. Even the judge looked furious. Cole's attorney frantically whispered into his ear, but Cole shoved him off, wild-eyed, finally losing the composure he prided himself on. I had to protect myself, he barked. She was unpredictable, Serena snapped. No, Mr. Harrington, you needed control. There is a difference. Cole glared at Evelyn with a look that could burn through walls. But the room had shifted. The narrative had shifted. And for the first time, Evelyn wasn't the one being judged. Serena leaned closer to the microphone, voice clear, calm, irrefutable. Your Honor, we request immediate reconsideration of all previous arguments, given the documented pattern of manipulation, psychological abuse, and exploitation by Mr. Harrington. Evelyn felt her pulse thrum in her ears. The tide had finally turned. And Cole Harrington had no idea the biggest blow was still coming. Cole Harrington had always believed he could outtalk consequences. That charm, confidence, and power were enough to bend any courtroom or any person to his will. But as Serena Wolf laid out piece after piece of evidence, something in the room shifted. The arrogance that once clung to Cole like an expensive cologne began to evaporate. The judge removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose with the wariness of a man who had seen too many liars try to turn the court into a stage. Mr. Harrington, the judge said, voice tight, these accusations are serious. Hidden surveillance, manipulated medical documentation, misappropriation of intellectual property. Cole swallowed hard but lifted his chin, trying to recover his confidence. With all due respect, Your Honor, my wife is. Stop. The single word cracked through the air like a gavel strike. Evelyn watched from her seat, hands clasped in her lap. She could almost feel the old fear creeping up her spine. The instinct to shrink, apologize, smooth things over. But she held still. She forced herself to stay grounded in the truth now exposed under the courtroom lights. Serena handed the judge a bound packet. Your Honor, we also submitted financial discrepancies discovered last week during a review of Harrington and Hale's expenditures. "Objection," Cole's attorney blurted, but the judge raised a hand. "Save it." He opened the packet. "According to this, Mr. Harrington, you used company funds to finance weekends at the Hamptons property, accompanied by Miss Klein, while claiming those were mandatory wellness retreats for corporate strategy." A low murmur rippled among the spectators. Mara's face drained of color. She leaned toward Cole, whispering sharply, but he pulled his arm away. The judge continued flipping through pages. "And here, charges for personal gifts, luxury travel, and promotional expenses tied to an individual matching Miss Klein's profile, paid using company credit lines." Cole stiffened. "That's a business investment." The judge's eyebrow arched. "A business investment involving Tiffany jewelry receipts?" A few people in the gallery muffled laughter. Cole's attorney tried to speak again, but the judge silenced him with a glare. Serena stepped forward, voice unwavering. "Your Honor, this pattern demonstrates not only manipulation toward my client, but also misuse of corporate resources. Mrs. Hart's contributions were buried while Mr. Harrington illegally funneled company assets toward an extramarital relationship." Cole snapped. "That's not, you're twisting. Evelyn knows how emotional she gets." Serena cut him off sharply. "My client's emotional state has nothing to do with your financial misconduct." Cole's facade splintered. His jaw twitched, eyes narrowing with venom. "You think this changes anything?" he hissed. "You think anyone will believe her now after everything?" Then he made a critical mistake. He turned fully toward Evelyn, forgetting the microphones, the spectators, the court reporter, and spat, "You're nothing without me. You'll always be nothing." The room froze. Even Mara inhaled sharply. Serena's gaze hardened into something lethal. She stepped between Evelyn and Cole, blocking him from view. "Your Honor," Serena said evenly, "you just heard a clear demonstration of the psychological abuse Mrs. Hart has endured throughout this marriage." The judge's expression darkened. "Indeed." Cole's attorney buried his face in his hands. The judge set the documents aside. "I will need time to review all evidence thoroughly. But let me be clear. The court does not look kindly upon deceit, coercion, or personal attacks made inside this chamber." Cole opened his mouth, but the judge raised a hand again. "Mr. Harrington, from this moment forward, speak only when spoken to." Cole's glare could have scorched stone. But Evelyn, she felt something uncoil inside her. A knot that had lived in her chest for years loosened, as if finally releasing her from a cage she didn't realize she had accepted. And just when it seemed the courtroom had reached its peak of chaos, a knock on the door signaled a new arrival, carrying information that would detonate Cole's world completely. The courtroom door opened with a soft click, subtle, almost polite. But the energy in the room snapped like a live wire. Everyone turned. Cole straightened, shoulders stiffening as if bracing for a blow he didn't yet understand. Evelyn felt her stomach tighten. A bailiff stepped inside. "Your Honor, we have an authorized representative requesting to submit urgent evidence in connection to Case 23H914. The judge frowned. "Who is the representative?" The bailiff stepped aside. A woman entered, tall, poised, wearing a navy blazer with the nameplate of a major financial firm clipped to her lapel. She introduced herself with steady confidence. "Your Honor, my name is Natalie Crane, Senior Compliance Officer at Walden Equity Partners." A shockwave moved through the courtroom. Walden Equity, the largest minority shareholder of Harrington and Hale. The same firm Cole had boasted about securing an unbreakable partnership with. Cole's attorney paled. Mara visibly tensed. The judge nodded. "State your purpose." Natalie set a thick folder on the evidence table. "Walden Equity received an anonymous tip last night regarding financial irregularities tied to Mr. Harrington's management practices. After a preliminary audit, we discovered discrepancies significant enough to warrant shareholder inquiry and, potentially, federal investigation." Cole shot to his feet. "This is outrageous. You had no authority to." The judge slammed his gavel. "Sit down," Natalie continued. "Additionally, we identified internal documents suggesting that Mrs. Hart's contributions during the early stages of Harrington and Hale were intentionally obscured, likely to manipulate valuation percentages during the prenup and expected divorce." She looked directly at Evelyn, not with pity, but with respect. "These documents contain timestamps, email chains, and project files that verify Mrs. Hart acted as a de facto co-designer during the company's foundational period." Serena smiled, a small, controlled smile, but one Evelyn noticed instantly. Cole's voice cracked. You can't be serious. This is a misunderstanding. Walden Equity is on my side. Natalie didn't blink. Walden Equity is on the side of accountability, Mr. Harrington. Your personal matters became material the second you used company funds to cover them. Gasps erupted. Cole turned to Mara as if seeking backup, but Mara shrank in her seat. Her eyes darted around nervously. She had not expected the tide to shift this violently. Natalie then held up a final document. We also uncovered a suspicious wire transfer. $50,000 sent from a secondary corporate account to an individual listed as M. Klein. Mara inhaled sharply. Cole hissed. That was compensation for PR consulting. Natalie's tone chilled. She is not listed as an employee, vendor, or contractor. It appears to be a personal transfer disguised as business expenditure. The judge's face hardened. Mr. Harrington, this is rapidly moving beyond a domestic matter. Serena stepped forward. Your Honor, given the new evidence, we request immediate recognition of Mrs. Hart's contributions, penalties for fraudulent filings, and full investigation into Mr. Harrington's financial conduct. Cole snapped. This is a setup. Someone is manipulating. Natalie cut him off. The anonymous tip came from within your company, Mr. Harrington. Someone who had access to internal systems and felt morally compelled to speak up. Cole froze. Everyone watched. He looked around wildly, scanning faces, as if trying to identify the traitor among his own team. Evelyn watched him unravel. The man who once controlled every room, now reduced to a cornered predator fighting ghosts. Then Natalie added, almost gently, there's more. But Walden Equity will be working with investigators separately. Cole's attorney sank deeper into his seat. The judge exhaled, long and heavy. Given the gravity of this material, I am suspending all prior assumptions. Mrs. Hart's position is hereby strengthened pending final review. Mr. Harrington, you are barred from accessing corporate accounts or shared assets until further notice. Cole's jaw fell open. You can't do this to me. The judge's stare was ice. Sir, you did this to yourself. And Evelyn realized something profound. For the first time in years, Cole Harrington was afraid. For years, Cole Harrington had been the sun around which everyone else was forced to orbit. Employees adjusted their schedules to his moods, investors rephrased their expectations to suit his ego, and Evelyn, for far too long, shrank herself to fit the narrow space he allowed her to exist in. But now, inside that courtroom, something irreversible had happened. The orbit shifted, and Cole was no longer the center. The judge requested a brief recess to process the avalanche of evidence. The moment his gavel struck, noise erupted, reporters whispering, attorneys scrambling, spectators buzzing like bees stirred from a hive. Evelyn remained seated, hands trembling slightly, but her spine straightened. She felt taller. Not invincible, not fearless, but awake. Across the room, Cole was a man cracking in real time. His face was pale under the harsh courtroom lights, his jaw clenched so tight a vein pulsed visibly at his temple. Mara reached for his arm, but he jerked away, fury radiating off him. What the hell is this? Cole hissed at his lawyer. You said everything was locked down. His attorney swallowed hard. Cole, this level of evidence? I didn't know. I couldn't have known. You're fired, Cole spat. In the middle of a hearing? The attorney shot back. You think anyone will represent you after this disaster? Cole didn't answer. Evelyn looked away. It was too much to watch. Not because she felt pity, but because witnessing the unraveling of the man who had tormented her was strangely overwhelming. Serena placed a steady hand on Evelyn's shoulder. You did well. I didn't do anything, Evelyn whispered. You survived him, Serena replied. Sometimes that's the greatest act of strength. In the hallway, Mason waited, leaning casually against the wall, but the moment he saw Evelyn, he straightened. His gaze scanned her face, searching for cracks, fear, distress. Instead, he found something new there, the early flicker of self-belief. You held your ground, he said softly. Evelyn exhaled shakily. I don't know how. You remembered the truth, Mason said. That's what men like Cole fear most. Evelyn's chest warmed unexpectedly. She didn't know when Mason had become a steady presence. But she wasn't fighting it, not today. But peace never lasted long around Cole. The doors swung open, and he stormed into the hallway like a wounded predator cornered by hunters. His eyes locked onto Evelyn, burning with humiliation and desperate rage. This isn't over, he snarled. I built everything? You think a few doctor documents will destroy me? Serena stepped between them. Mr. Harrington, approach my client again, and I will file a restraining request within the hour. Cole laughed, sharp, ugly. Of course you'd hide behind your lawyer, Evie. You're nothing without. Mason moved. He didn't touch Cole. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stepped forward with calm, unmistakable authority. That's enough, Cole sneered. And who the hell are you supposed to be? Mason held his gaze. The man who will ensure she never has to hear your voice again. The hallway went still. Cole blinked, realization striking like lightning. You, he whispered. You did this. You're the anonymous tip. You're trying to tank my company. Your own actions tanked your company, Mason said evenly. I simply refuse to watch you bury a woman who did nothing but support you. Mara tugged Cole's sleeve. Cole, stop. People are looking. But Cole only glared, chest rising and falling sharply. For the first time, he wasn't the dominant force in the room. He wasn't feared. He wasn't admired. He was exposed. The bailiff called everyone back inside. Serena touched Evelyn's arm. Ready? No? Yes, maybe. But Evelyn stood anyway, her chin lifting, her step steady. Because the moment Cole lost control, she gained hers. And as she walked back into the courtroom, she felt the tide turning fully, finally, completely in her favor. The courtroom felt different as everyone returned from recess, as if the oxygen had shifted, as if gravity itself had tilted in another direction. Even the judge seemed to carry a new heaviness, the kind that came when the truth refused to stay buried any longer. Cole Harrington entered with the stiff gait of a man walking toward his own execution. Mara followed behind, no longer smug, her eyes darting nervously to anyone who looked at her too long. Whispers trailed them like a cold draft. Evelyn walked in last, her steps quiet but steady. Mason stood off to the side, giving her a reassuring nod, not possessive, not controlling, just present. That simple presence gave her strength she didn't know she still possessed. The judge cleared his throat. Court is back in session. Silence fell. Serena Wolf rose first. Your Honor, given the new evidence, we request immediate protective measures for my client. Amendment to the division of assets and acknowledgement of Mrs. Hart's foundational role in the early development of Harrington and Hale. Cole's attorney, now visibly rattled, attempted to respond, but the judge cut in sharply. We have more pressing issues to address first. He turned slowly toward Cole. Mr. Harrington, the financial records provided by Walden Equity raise substantial concern for corporate misconduct, misuse of shareholder funds, and potential fraud. Cole's face tightened. Your Honor, sit, the judge ordered. Cole sat. The judge continued, voice hardening by the second. This court is obligated to notify the district attorney's office regarding the irregularities presented. A corporate investigation will be initiated immediately. Gasps rippled through the room. Evelyn inhaled sharply. She had expected a reprimand, not this. Cole gripped the table until his knuckles whitened. You can't start an investigation based on incomplete data. This data, the judge replied, is compelling enough to warrant inquiry. Serena exchanged a brief, knowing look with Natalie Crane. They had anticipated this possibility. Evelyn could now see that in their calm expressions, their steady confidence. The women in the room had prepared for a war Cole never even imagined. Then the judge shifted his focus to Evelyn. Mrs. Hart, I have reviewed the documentation pertaining to your contributions to Harrington and Hale. It is clear you played a substantial, uncredited role in the early designs and brand formation. This significantly alters the court's view of asset distribution. Cole shot up again. That's ridiculous. She was just helping. It wasn't. That is enough. The judge's voice boomed. Cole fell silent, rage vibrating just beneath his skin. In light of this, the judge continued, Mrs. Hart will receive a significantly increased settlement, reflecting her contributions as a foundational designer during the company's early growth period. Evelyn felt tears sting her eyes, not from sorrow but from the overwhelming weight of long-denied recognition. Cole slammed his fist on the table. This is a joke. She doesn't deserve a cent more. The judge glared at him. One more outburst and you will be held in contempt. But Cole wasn't listening. His mask had cracked completely. You're doing this to punish me, he shouted at Evelyn. You think you won something? You think anyone will respect you after this? Serena stood. Respect doesn't come from lies, Mr. Harrington. it comes from truth. The judge continued. Furthermore, due to the documented patterns of emotional manipulation and unauthorized surveillance, Mrs. Hart is entitled to full protection under the court. A restraining order will be filed pending review. Mara let out a soft gasp. Cole turned on her. "This is your fault," he barked. "You should have stopped that woman from coming forward." Mara recoiled, embarrassment turning to fear. And for the first time, Evelyn felt nothing for him. No guilt, no fear, no old attachment, just clarity. This was the man she had sacrificed years of her life for. This was the man she had once loved. Now he was simply a stranger, collapsing beneath the weight of his own deceit. The judge struck the gavel. Court adjourned for today. Evelyn exhaled shakily. As she turned to leave, Cole called her name, voice trembling. But this time, he was the one begging for something he would never get again. Evelyn. Her name echoed through the courtroom hallway just as she stepped toward the exit. It wasn't the confident bark Cole used to command rooms. It was something unfamiliar, strained, trembling, almost frantic. She froze for half a second. Not because she feared him, but because for the first time, he sounded like a man who realized he was losing everything. She turned slowly. Cole was standing in the doorway of the courtroom, chest rising and falling sharply, hair slightly disheveled from running a hand through it too many times. Mara lingered behind him, unsure whether to follow or flee. Cole's attorney was nowhere in sight. "Evelyn, wait," he said again, softer this time. Serena stepped instinctively in front of Evelyn, blocking Cole's path with a calm, practiced stance. "Mr. Harrington, you've been warned not to approach my client." Cole ignored her. His desperate eyes were fixed on Evelyn. "Evie, please, just listen. 2 minutes, that's all I'm asking." Evie, the name he only used when he wanted something. Evelyn's stomach turned, but she forced her expression to stay neutral. Mason approached silently from her left, close enough to intervene, far enough to let her choose. He didn't speak, he didn't pressure. He simply stood, with quiet support. Evelyn inhaled slowly. 2 minutes, public hallway, Serena stays. Cole swallowed and nodded quickly, as if grateful for even that scrap of mercy. They stepped a few feet away. Not far, the bailiff kept watch, Serena at Evelyn's side, Mason leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, ready if needed. Cole rubbed the back of his neck, struggling for words. His hands shook. I didn't know they had all that," he whispered. "I didn't expect." "That's the thing," Evelyn said quietly. "You never expect consequences." He flinched. "Evie, I know I made mistakes, but what Serena showed, some of it was taken out of context. It looks worse than it." "It is worse," she cut in. "It's exactly what it looks like." He looked away. "I'm losing everything." "Yes," she replied simply. He blinked at her, stunned. Maybe he expected sympathy. Maybe he still believed she needed him enough to soften the blow. "You don't have to do this. You don't have to destroy me." "Cole," she said, voice steady. "I didn't destroy you. You did that yourself." His jaw clenched. "I can fix this. If you drop the claims, if you help me get ahead of the investigation, I can." "You can what?" Evelyn asked. "Lie your way out again? Use me like you used my work? Turn the story so you come out the hero?" He stilled. She continued. "You never wanted a wife. You wanted an accessory, someone pretty, quiet, and endlessly forgiving." He looked wounded for the first time. "Evie, we built a life together. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It did," she said gently. "But it means nothing now." Cole's composure shattered. "I can't lose you." "You lost me a long time ago," Evelyn replied. He took a shaky step toward her, but Mason moved instantly, placing himself between them with a calm, immovable presence. "That's close enough," Mason said. Cole glared at him. "Stay out of this." Mason didn't blink. "No." Something in Cole snapped. "You think she'll pick you? You think you're better than me?" "It doesn't matter what I think," Mason replied. "It matters what she deserves." Evelyn felt her heart thud, not from fear but from clarity. She stepped around Mason, meeting Cole's furious, pleading eyes one last time. "I deserve peace," she said. "I deserve truth, and I deserve a life you're not in." Those words hit him harder than any courtroom blow. His shoulders collapsed. For the first time, Cole Harrington looked small. The bailiff approached. "Ma'am, do you need escort?" Evelyn shook her head. "No, I'm done here." She turned away from the man who once controlled her world, and didn't look back. As she walked toward the exit, held steady by Serena's quiet pride and Mason's silent presence beside her, the final piece of her old life fell away, leaving room for the woman she was finally becoming. Outside the courthouse, the November air bit sharply at Evelyn's cheeks as she stepped onto the broad stone steps. A cluster of reporters waited at the bottom, microphones raised like spears pointed toward whatever story bled loudest. Cole Harrington had always loved that attention, but today, attention was the last thing he wanted. Mason walked beside Evelyn with quiet, unobtrusive confidence. He didn't touch her. He didn't lead her. He simply matched her pace, as if reminding her she wasn't walking through this storm alone. Serena followed a step behind, already texting someone, probably coordinating the next legal move, layered and precise as always. As Evelyn reached the midpoint of the steps, cameras flashed. "Mrs. Hart, is it true Mr. Harrington falsified financial records?" "Evelyn, how do you respond to allegations of emotional abuse? Is the restraining order official? Are you and Mason Grant working together professionally or personally?" Evelyn froze. She wasn't ready for this part. She wasn't ready for all eyes on her again. Cole burst through the courthouse doors moments later, face red, tie crooked, looking nothing like the golden CEO who used to grace magazine covers. Reporters swarmed him instantly. "Mr. Harrington, shareholders want a statement. Is it true Walden Equity is launching a full audit? Did you knowingly misuse company funds?" Cole shoved past them, voice raised. "No comment. Back off." The scene spiraled into chaos. Then, a sound sliced through the noise. A deep, polished engine purr. A sleek black limousine rolled to the curb in front of the courthouse, its chrome trim gleaming under the gray morning light. A driver in a tailored black suit stepped out, circling the vehicle with the precision of a man trained to protect high-level clients. The crowd's noise softened to murmurs. Evelyn blinked. "Mason, is that?" "Yes," Mason said quietly. "I had my team bring it." "But why?" "Because Cole turned your life into a spectacle," Mason answered. "You deserve to walk out of this with dignity." The limo door opened. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cole pushed forward, bewildered. "What is this? A publicity stunt?" Mason's expression didn't change. "No, this is called respect." But what happened next stunned even Evelyn. A second figure stepped out from inside the limo. A man in an immaculate gray suit with an ID badge from the State Financial Crimes Division clipped to his jacket. He walked directly toward Cole. "Mr. Harrington," he announced, his voice carrying over the crowd, "you are hereby served with a notice of mandatory cooperation in the ongoing investigation into Harrington and Hale corporate misconduct. This requires full disclosure of all financial documents within 10 business days." Reporters gasped. Cameras flashed. Cole's face strained white. "This is harassment," he snarled. "You can't serve me in public." The officer remained unmoved. "Sir, you've ignored 2 private requests. Consider this your final notice." Cole looked like the world was collapsing under his feet. Mara quietly slipped away from his side, blending into the crowd, distancing herself inch by inch. Evelyn watched it all with a surreal calm. Not triumphant, not cruel, just done. Done carrying the weight of his choices. Done being the silent casualty of his ego. A reporter suddenly turned to her. "Mrs. Hart, do you have a comment?" For the first time in years, Evelyn didn't shrink. She didn't hide. Her voice was steady when she answered, "I'm choosing peace. The rest will take care of itself." The crowd murmured in admiration. Mason opened the limo door for her, not as a savior, not as a symbol, but as someone who saw her worth long before today. She hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. As the door closed behind her, Cole stood alone on the courthouse steps, drowning in the consequences he once believed would never reach him. The limousine glided through Manhattan like a silent shadow, insulated from the chaos that had erupted outside the courthouse. Evelyn sat beside Mason, hands folded tightly in her lap, still absorbing what had just unfolded. The world felt different now, lighter around the edges, heavier at the center. She wasn't the same woman who had once trembled at Cole's voice. Still, disbelief lingered like a faint ache. "You okay?" Mason asked gently, watching her carefully. "Yes," she said, then corrected herself. "Maybe. I don't know." He gave a small nod. "That's normal. Today was a lot." She huffed a faint laugh. "That's one way to put it." The limo stopped at a quiet corner of Soho, in front of a restored brick building with soft industrial lighting and tall windows framed in matte black steel. Evelyn frowned. "Where are we?" Mason stepped out first, then offered her a hand, not insistently, not expectantly. She took it. "This," he said as they approached the entrance, "is something I've been wanting to show you." He pushed open the door. Warm light filled the space. A studio. A design studio. Not corporate, not cold. Beautifully curated, with natural wood tables, soft leather seating, sample palettes displayed in organized drawers, and sunlight pouring through skylights. It smelled faintly of cedar and linen. The walls were lined with boards where early mock-ups hung like art pieces. Evelyn's breath caught. "What is this?" Mason moved beside her, hands in his pockets. "6 months ago, I began planning a new division, Grant Interiors. I wanted a team that wasn't afraid to think differently." He paused. "And then I saw your old proposal. The one you submitted anonymously, remember?" She nodded, stunned. "I knew then that I didn't just want you to consult," he said. "I wanted you to build this." She blinked, overwhelmed. "Mason, I can't. After everything, I don't even know if I'm ready." "You don't have to be," he said gently, "but I need you to see something." He walked to a drafting table near the window and lifted a folder, thick, bound with her name embossed in soft gold lettering. Evelyn Hart, Creative Director, Proposal. Her knees nearly gave out. "I drafted this months ago," Mason continued, "not to pressure you, not to rush you, but because I believe your work deserves a home, and I didn't want Cole's shadow anywhere near it." Evelyn touched the folder with trembling hands. "You've been planning this for me?" "For you," he said softly, "and for the work the world hasn't seen yet." Her throat tightened. "Why? Why go this far?" He hesitated, not with uncertainty, but with sincerity. "Because your talent is extraordinary," he said. "Because you've survived something most people never speak about. Because you deserve to rise without someone clipping your wings." His gaze deepened. "And maybe, because I care about you more than I wanted to admit." The words warmed places she hadn't felt in years, places Cole had made her believe were unworthy of affection. "Mason," she whispered, unsure what else to say. He didn't step closer, didn't trap her, didn't push. He simply offered space. "You don't owe me anything," he added quietly. "If you want this, it's yours. If you need time, you'll have it. If you walk away, I'll still respect whatever you choose." Evelyn looked around the studio, feeling something awaken inside her, a spark she thought Cole had extinguished. Possibility. Hope. The version of herself she used to be. She pressed a hand to her chest, steadying her breath. "I want to try," she said finally. "I'm scared, but I want to try." Mason exhaled, relief softening his posture. "Then we begin whenever you're ready." She smiled for the first time in what felt like years. And just as she turned to take in the studio again, her phone buzzed, one notification that made her blood run cold. A headline: "Cole Harrington's shareholders demand emergency meeting." The final fallout was beginning, and Evelyn was no longer the casualty. She was becoming the witness to his unraveling. By the next morning, Manhattan buzzed with a story hotter than any market headline. Finance forums, legal blogs, and even casual gossip feeds were ablaze with the same explosive update: Cole Harrington faces shareholder revolt. Evelyn stared at the notification on her phone, sitting at the long wooden table in the Soho studio Mason had shown her the night before. Her coffee sat untouched, growing cold beside her sketchbook. She didn't take pleasure in Cole's downfall. Not exactly. What she felt was closer to release, like an old chain around her chest had finally snapped. Mason entered quietly, setting a fresh cup of coffee beside her. "You saw the news?" She nodded. "They scheduled the meeting for this afternoon." "They're moving fast," Mason said. "Faster than even I expected." Evelyn looked up at him. "Is this because of the investigation?" He shook his head. "It's because shareholders fear one thing more than scandal: loss. Cole's instability is now a liability they can no longer hide." The word instability struck her with bitter irony. For years Cole had labeled her unstable. Now the world saw him for what he truly was. "Are you sure you want to be anywhere near this?" Mason asked gently. But Evelyn surprised herself. "Yes," she answered. "I do." He studied her face, not doubting her strength, but checking for the cost. When he saw clarity there, he nodded. "Then come with me," he said softly. "You deserve to hear the truth spoken out loud, not whispered in the shadows." Hours later, Evelyn found herself standing outside the towering glass headquarters of Harrington and Hale, the very empire she helped shape, then watched Cole claim as entirely his own. Today, the building felt unfamiliar. Strangers were rushing in and out with tablet portfolios and desperate expressions. Camera crews crowded the sidewalk. A reporter recognized Evelyn instantly. "Mrs. Hart, are you attending the emergency meeting?" She met the woman's eyes, steady. "I'm here to observe. Is it true your contributions were hidden during the early stages of the company's growth?" "Yes," Evelyn answered simply. "Do you believe Cole Harrington abused his power?" Evelyn paused. Not for uncertainty, but for control. Cole had turned emotional restraint into a weapon against her. Now she used it as armor. "I believe the truth is finally coming to light," she said. "And I hope everyone receives the accountability they deserve." The reporter blinked, surprised by her poise. Inside, the boardroom buzzed like an overcrowded hive. Executives whispered, phone screens flashed with stock alerts, and Walden Equity representatives stood at the front like prosecutors ready to present their case. Evelyn remained near the back with Mason, unnoticed by most, until Cole walked in. He froze when he saw her. "Why is she here?" he demanded, pointing. "This is a confidential meeting." Walden's compliance officer, Natalie Crane, stepped forward calmly. "Mrs. Hart's intellectual property is part of the investigation. She has every right to be present." Cole's mouth snapped shut. The meeting began, and the air grew heavy with revelations. Fraudulent expense lines, manipulated reports, unapproved transfers, hidden surveillance, legal risks, loss projections, investors losing confidence. Cole became increasingly frantic. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he shouted. "I built this. Without me, none of you would have jobs." Walden's senior partner replied, "Without integrity, Mr. Harrington, you no longer have a position." A hush fell. Cole turned to Evelyn, desperation trembling under his anger. "Evie, tell them. Tell them I'm not a bad person. Tell them you don't want this." Evelyn met his gaze, the gaze that once intimidated her into silence, and spoke with the clarity of a woman reborn. "I wanted truth," she said. "I wanted peace. You chose everything that followed." Cole's breath caught, as if struck. Natalie stepped forward. Effective immediately, the board moves to suspend Cole Harrington as CEO pending investigation. The room erupted. Cole lunged forward, but Mason placed a firm hand on Evelyn's arm, guiding her out of the boardroom before the chaos spiraled. Outside in the quieter hallway, Evelyn exhaled shakily. "It's over," she whispered. Mason shook his head gently. "No, Evelyn, it's beginning." And as her eyes met his, she realized the life ahead of her was finally her own to build. Winter arrived in Manhattan with a quiet softness, the kind that blurred the harsh edges of the city. Snow dusted the sidewalks outside Evelyn's new Soho studio, settling gently against the tall windows as if blessing the next chapter of her life. Inside, the space buzzed with life. Samples of warm woods, textured fabrics, and hand-drawn schematics lay across drafting tables. Her small but growing team worked with focused enthusiasm, their laughter floating through the open room. Evelyn's name, Evelyn Hart Studio, now hung proudly on a brushed brass plaque beside the entrance. Everything was different. Everything was finally hers. It had been 8 weeks since the shareholder revolt. 8 weeks since Cole Harrington was suspended, publicly disgraced, then formally charged with financial misconduct and privacy violations. 8 weeks since several companies withdrew partnerships from him, citing ethical concerns. Mara had vanished from public view, and insiders whispered she had cooperated with investigators to save herself. The fall was complete, and Evelyn had watched it happen, not with vengeance, but with closure. She no longer needed revenge to heal. The truth had handled that for her. This morning, however, wasn't about Cole. It was about her future. She stood at her desk reviewing plans for a new project, the redesign of an elite residential tower in Tribeca. A contract she earned not because of scandal, but because industry leaders saw her brilliance at last. A soft knock sounded at the studio door. She didn't have to turn around to know who it was. Mason entered carrying 2 coffees, snowflakes clinging to the shoulders of his navy coat. "You've been here since 6 a.m., he said, smiling as he handed her one. "Big project," she replied, unable to hide her excitement. "Big woman behind it," he corrected. Heat warmed her cheeks. In the weeks since the hearing, their bond had deepened, not rushed, not forced, but natural. Their conversations flowed easily. Their trust grew quickly. Their connection felt like something built on honesty instead of performance, steadiness instead of chaos. Still, Evelyn had been cautious. She needed time to rebuild herself before stepping into anything new. Mason had understood that without her ever having to explain. He took a seat beside her drafting table. "I saw the finished proposal. It's brilliant." She smiled softly. "Thank you for everything. For not pushing. For letting me find my footing again." He held her gaze, warm and steady. "I didn't want to fix you, Evelyn. I wanted to support you while you remembered you never needed fixing." Her throat tightened. This man had offered her dignity at a time she had forgotten what it felt like. A moment of quiet settled between them. Comfortable, full of meaning. Then Mason reached into his coat pocket. Her breath hitched when she saw the small velvet box. He held it gently, not opening it yet. "Before you panic," he said softly, "it's not a ring." Relief and curiosity tangled together. He opened the box. Inside was a delicate silver pendant shaped like a compass. "Simple, elegant. It's a symbol," he said, "for direction, for choosing your own path, for never letting someone else steer your life again." Her eyes blurred with emotion. "Mason, it's beautiful." "It's yours," he said, fastening it gently around her neck. "But there's one more thing." Her pulse quickened. "I love you, Evelyn," he said. "I don't expect anything from you. Not today, not tomorrow. But when, if you're ready, I'd like to build more than studios with you. I'd like a life with you." She inhaled sharply, a soft, trembling sound. For the first time in years, her heart didn't feel afraid. She took his hands in hers. "I'm ready," she whispered, "for all of it." He smiled, that quiet, grounding smile she had come to trust, and pulled her gently into his arms. Outside, snow continued falling softly over Manhattan. Inside, Evelyn Hart stepped fully into the future she had earned with courage, truth, and rebirth. And this time, she wasn't rising alone. She was rising with love. So that's the end of our story. And if you're still here with me right now, my friend, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a real way. Maybe you saw a part of yourself in Evelyn, the part that stayed strong even when life tried to convince you otherwise. And maybe, just like her, you're learning that walking away from what breaks you is not weakness. It's wisdom. The Stoic Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That's exactly what Evelyn discovered. We can't control betrayal, disappointment, or the people who fail us, but we can choose how we rise after it. Healing isn't dramatic, it's quiet. It's choosing your peace, it's choosing yourself. And remember, even after the darkest chapters, life still has a way of handing you a new beginning, sometimes in places you never expected. If this story gave you courage, comfort, or even a little clarity, then don't leave without giving it some love. Like the video, share it with someone who needs this reminder, and subscribe to our channel so you and I can keep walking through these powerful stories together. You're not alone, and your comeback is already on its way.